Okay, folks, so in this video, I'm going to talk you through the process of planning and writing an IELTS Task 1. The example we're going to use is a data style question, and the data is presented in this video in the form of a table. I just want to start by reviewing what's expected of IELTS Task 1 and what you need to do, and explaining a little bit the process that I'm using here to approach this task and can be applied to other data style tasks, but also can be applied to an extent to every IELTS Task 1 that you do. So, to begin with, IELTS Task 1, this is the sentence that appears in every single question. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. That is a nice summary of what you're expected to do in Task 1. You're going to be given some factual information. It's going to be presented either as data and statistics in the form of a line graph, bar chart, pie chart, table, or also a combination of one or more of these. You may also be given a process diagram or a map. Okay, so how do we go about our planning when we have a question like this? We are asked to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, selecting and reporting the main features is the most important part of your planning stage. So I've identified here, you're writing 150 words. What you want to look for is 3 main features. And as I'll show you when I demonstrate the planning, those main features are not just the highest number or the lowest number or the thing that stands out the most. What you want to do is find a way to divide all the data, all of the information there, into 3 parts, into 3 main parts. And within any of those parts, there may be high or low numbers, but what we're trying to do when we see the data and identify 3 features is to divide all of that data into 3 main parts. Now, further than that, you want 2 of those parts to be related to each other, because that's how you're going to show that you are making comparison. So many of the essays that score low in terms of task achievement get a low score because they report facts that they can see in the information, but there is not enough recognition of the relationship and connection between the facts that they're reporting. So if you can identify 3 main features, 3 main trends, 3 main things going on in the data, and 2 of them related to each other, when you start to write, as you'll see here, you're going to write 3 paragraphs in total, but one of those paragraphs is an introduction. That means your 3 main features are all going to be reported in 2 main body paragraphs. And because of that, you are having to decide which 2 should be reported together, and you're able to show that you've recognized connections between the data. You also, this is very important, the examiners stipulated in their marking criteria, you need to identify an overall trend. Now, the overall trend is not a sentence like the data shows the number of people participating in different sports at different times of the year, for example. That's not an overview, that's an introductory sentence. The overview must be one general statement describing all of the data, one general statement describing the overall trend you can see. Okay, before we start then, final thing, when it comes to the writing, I'm going to write this essay in 3 paragraphs, which is an introduction and 2 main body paragraphs. This is not the only approach that you can use, but it is one that works with almost any type of IELTS Task 1 data style question, and you can follow this process to get a reasonable answer that is above the word count and does address the task. If you are writing a 4 paragraph Task 1, I encourage you to still make your 3 features over 2 paragraphs. So that means your 4 paragraphs may contain 1 introduction, maybe 1 paragraph which describes your overview, but then you still talk about your 3 features in 2 paragraphs. In the main body paragraphs, I'm going to try and separate out when I am describing a trend and when I'm giving data to support that trend. So first I'll make a statement about what the trend is, and then I will provide numbers and statistics to support that. This means that I'm not going to confuse the reader by trying to incorporate numbers or complicated descriptions while I'm actually describing the features. So for cohesion and coherence, this is going to make the essay much more readable and clearer. Final thing I want to say is about conclusions. You do not have to have a conclusion in IELTS Task 1. A lot of writers like to put their overview at the end because they feel that this gives a nice sense of winding up or finishing the summary, and that's absolutely fine if you want to do that. In the example I do today, I'm going to put my overview at the beginning. And the reason for that is it's just as good there. You don't need a conclusion, but if you get into the habit of putting your overview with the introduction, either in the same paragraph as the introduction or in a new paragraph, but on its own, if you get into the habit of doing that, you know that you've got your overview there. You only have 20 minutes to write this. If you run out of time, you know you've done the overview and you're not going to be penalized for not having an overview. So you can put the overview at the end, you can put it at the beginning, it doesn't matter, but I encourage you to put it at the beginning because at least you know it's there, and what you mustn't do is write a summary which does not contain an overview. Okay, so to demonstrate how we plan our answer to a tables style question using this system of 3 key features, 2 related to each other and an overview, I've got 2 different tables here to show you. Let's start with the first one, A. Now what I want to do is first, when I look at the table, identify which of the axes, if any, show consecutive numbers. Show progress of some sort. If we look down the y-axis here, we can see that we've got 6 different activities. Now, there's no real relationship between the activities, right? I could move cinema to the top and it wouldn't really change the pattern of the data at all. The order of the leisure time activities down this axis is not important, but the order of groups along the x-axis does demonstrate consecutive numbers, right? We go from teenagers to people in their 20s, to people in their 30s, to people in their 40s, to people in their 50s. So this is going to help me to identify my 3 key features. I'm not going to try and break my data down into 3 key features vertically. That doesn't make any sense because there is no pattern along the vertical axis. However, I can break my data down horizontally, and what I mean by that is by following the horizontal axis, I can identify a pattern, and I can use that to group these 6 categories into 3 main features. Now, how do I do that? Well, let's just go along that horizontal axis and see what pattern each represents. We can see for TV and watching videos, very popular with people in their teens, very popular with people in older years, and in between times that falls down. So the pattern kind of dips like that, right? Socializing with 4 or less people, we can see that starts quite low and then it rises and then it falls a little bit as well. Socializing with 4 or more people starts high, goes low and stays lower, so that falls completely. Individual exercise, okay, starts high, drops, rises again and then falls, so fluctuates a little bit, that one, and then ends high as well actually at the end. That's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? Then group exercise, very high, falls off to almost nothing. Cinema, high to low to high again. Okay, so now I've identified the trend in engagement with this activity as people grow older. It's very easy to group these 6 activities into 3 main categories. My first category is things which fall in popularity as you get older. So in that group, in that key feature is socializing with 4 or more people and group exercise and sport. My second category or second feature I'm going to talk about is things which become less popular in middle age and then become more popular again as you get older. So watching TV and videos and cinema. And then my final category is going to be things which become more popular in middle years and then fall in popularity afterwards. And obviously, the fact that individual exercise becomes more popular later in life, I will mention, but I can still group that together because it follows a similar trend to socializing with 4 or less people. So those are my 3 key features. Now, which 2 should be more closely related to each other? For me, the most obvious independent feature is independent feature 1, right? Key feature 2 and key feature 3 I'm going to talk about together. Now, I know that 2 and 3 are going to be reported together, so those are my related features. Final thing I need to do is identify an overview, and it's often the case with tables that there is no obvious pattern. There is no one statement that really describes the trend for everything, but that is my overview in this case. In this case, when it comes to the overview, I can simply say, overall, we can see that different activities are popular with different age groups. Or overall, we can see that people's preferences of leisure time activities change dramatically as they grow older. Okay, so that's if you have one axis which shows a sequence or consecutive numbers, and it's easy to identify patterns by following that axis. But what if you have a situation like B here, where actually neither axis shows a consecutive number, neither of the parameters of the table are showing a sequence of any sort? What about if, like in the example of B here, you have simply a group of countries and 3 categories? How are we going to divide this into 3 main features? It doesn't make a lot of sense simply to talk about one category followed by another category followed by another category, because I'm not going to have very many opportunity to recognize the connections between the data here. So in this case, looking at the individual numbers is going to be useful for me in trying to identify key features. What I really want to do is try to find a way to group these 5 countries into 3 categories. Now, the first obvious one to me is to talk about Ireland and Turkey together. They have similar high numbers for food and drink and tobacco, very similar middle numbers, and not that far away from each other in terms of leisure and education. So that's one key feature. So what I'm left with now is Italy, Spain, and Sweden, and I want to divide those into 2 main features. Spain would be the most obvious one to talk about independently of the other 2 here, because it starts higher, its spending on food and drinks and tobacco is quite a bit higher than the other 2 countries, and its spending on leisure and education is significantly lower. So based on that, I'm left with a second category of Italy and Sweden, and a third category of Spain. And I would talk about Italy and Sweden and Spain together in, Italy and Sweden and Spain together in the same paragraph, because there's not that much difference between their data. Ireland and Turkey, I'm going to talk about on their own because they have the most dramatic change. So there's my 3 key features. Now, in terms of an overview, you don't need to work too hard for this here, because there is something quite obvious. As we identified right at the beginning, all of the countries spend more on food and drinks and tobacco than on clothing and footwear, and the least amount on leisure and education. So that is my overview. Now we've identified 3 key features and an overview, we can begin writing either one of these tables. Okay, so here's the task. The table below shows the hours of leisure time spent by people in different age groups in some land. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So let's remember that is the sentence we hear with every IELTS task 1. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. We need to write 150 words and we've got 20 minutes to do all of our planning and to do the writing. So we've done the planning already and I've marked up here how we decided to divide the 3 main features. So as you'll see, the green is the independent feature. That's the feature that we're talking about on its own because it's those activities which fall in popularity as people get older. And then we're going to talk about the blue and the yellow together in the same paragraph because they show an opposite trend in terms of the difference between their popularity in middle-aged people and teens and elderly people. So those are our 3 main features, and we're going to write 3 paragraphs, 1 paragraph with an introduction and 2 paragraphs explaining these 3 main features with the second 2 main features together in the 3rd paragraph. Let's remember, in terms of our overview, we said there isn't really a general trend except for the fact that different age groups enjoy different activities. So we can go straight in and start writing now. My first sentence, as always, I want to do 2 things. We call this the introductory sentence. I want to paraphrase the question and I want to describe the parameters of the table. So the table, they said the table shows, so I'm going to say the table illustrates. The table illustrates, they say, hours of leisure time spent by different people in different age groups in some land. If we look at the top here, it also says per year, so I need to paraphrase that. So the table illustrates amount of time spent in 6 different free time activities by different age groups per annum. That's enough. That's my introductory sentence. Now I want to include my overview. Overall, we can see there is a great variation in popularity of these activities between the different, we've already said age groups, so let's say generations. Okay, that's my introduction done. So don't forget, we need to do a paraphrasing, an introductory sentence which paraphrases the question and talks about the parameters of the data here, free time activities and age groups, and an overview which describes the general trend, which in this case is there is no general identifiable trend. There's a lot of difference between different age groups. Okay, I can go in and start writing my first main body paragraph. And as we said here, we are going to try and write in a way that we don't describe data and trends at the same time. We don't describe the feature with the data. First, we describe what the feature is, and then we use data to support it. So perhaps the most striking feature of the data is the dramatic fall in popularity among older age groups experienced, let's say this, the dramatic fall in popularity of group activities, because the 2 green activities are in groups or in larger groups, right? So the dramatic fall in group activities, the dramatic fall in popularity of group activities among older grade age groups. Let me read that again. Perhaps the most striking feature of the data is the dramatic fall in popularity of group activities among older age groups. I'm not giving any numbers there. First, I'm just going to describe what the trend is. It falls. Now I'll give some data to support that. So, group socializing, that's paraphrasing, socializing with 4 or more people, group socializing and group sport let's do this. Teens, let's say under 30s is how we can describe these two groups. That's fine. Under 30s spend between 350 and 450 hours a year participating in group socializing and group sport. Over 60s spend just 25 hours socializing with 4 or more people and no time at all in group sport. Group sport I've said already, so let's say in what is this? Exercise, group exercise. Group exercise. So that's my first paragraph. It's just describing one feature on its own, and that's the data for activities which fall in popularity in older age groups. Okay, now move on and talk about my other two features. So turning attention to other activities, we can see that. Now again, I'm not going to try and give numbers yet. I'm just going to describe the trends, and then I will go into detail by giving numbers to support that or to explain that. So first, describe the trend. We can see that enjoy greater popularity among middle-aged participants, while others are more popular with teens and older citizens. Let's use a good collocation there. Let's say senior citizens. So turning our attention to other activities, we can see that some enjoy greater popularity among middle-aged participants, while others are more popular with teens and senior citizens. So that's giving like a topic sentence to describe the trend. Let's talk about the yellow first. Teens and over 70s spend well over twice as much time watching TV and going to the cinema as 40-year-olds, with watching TV by far the most popular of all activities, we can make a note there also that those numbers are higher than any other category. So with TV by far the most popular of all the listed activities. Okay, same paragraph, remember, I want to talk about the remaining feature. So the blue. Conversely, small group socializing and individual exercise both enjoy their greatest popularity among 40 and 50-year-olds, should we say? 40 and 50. 40 and 50. These participants spend some 300 hours per year on the former and around 25% more than their teenaged and elderly counterparts on the latter, 200 hours per year compared with 150. Okay, let's do a quick word count there then. It's 206 words, as we can see. I'm going to go through, very important, and I'm going to proofread and check. The way I proofread is by looking at the verbs, and I want to check two things specifically here. Am I using the right tense? And also, am I matching my verb to the subject? For example, should the verb have an S on the end? Should the S be missing? Should the subject be singular or plural? So the table illustrates that's good. Time spent in by different age groups per annum. Overall, we can see, I'm going to take away that comma, that doesn't need to be there. Overall, we can see there is a great variation. There is a great variation in popularity of these activities between the different generations. That's fine. Perhaps the most striking feature of the data is the dramatic fall in popularity of group activities among older age groups. Good. Under 30s spend, that's present tense, that's fine. Between 350 and 450 hours a year participating in group socializing and group sport. Over 60s spend just 25 hours socializing with 4 or more people and no time at all in group exercise. Maybe I can link these two sentences. So let's say using a linker there shows the connection between those sentences. Under 30 spend between 350 and 450 hours a year participating in group socializing and group sport, while over 60s spend just 25 hours socializing with 4 or more people and no time at all on group exercise. Good. Turning our attention to other activities, we can see that some enjoy greater popularity among middle-aged participants, while others are more popular with teens and senior citizens. Teens and over 70s spent, that's interesting. I am going to change that to the present tense. Spend well over twice as much time watching TV and going to the cinema as 40-year-olds, with TV by far the most popular of all the listed activities. Conversely, small group socializing and individual exercise both enjoy their greatest popularity among 40 and 50-year-olds. These participants spend some 300 hours per year in the former and around 25% more than their teenage and elderly counterparts on the latter, 200 hours per year compared with 150. Okay, so let's just go through now and check that we've done everything that we need to do and highlight which parts of this response are going to stand out for the examiner. So first sentence, we have paraphrased the question. They said per year, we've said per annum. They said the table illustrates, sorry, they said the table shows. We've said the table illustrates. They said hours of leisure time spent by different age groups. We said amount of time spent in 6 different activities by different age groups. Okay, we could have paraphrased that maybe a bit better, but that's okay. We've got an overview. Overall, we can see there is a greater variation in popularity of these activities between the different generations. Okay, introduction's good. I've got one paragraph containing the most dramatic feature, if you like, or one feature which doesn't really relate as closely to the other features I've identified, because it is a fall rather than a rise and fall, or a fall and rise respectively. So that's there. Don't forget, I have started with a sentence describing the trend and then given data or numbers to elaborate that, to explain that further. And I've got a second main body paragraph containing 2 features. I've used linkers there to talk about the connection between the 2 features. So first I've spoken about those activities which are more popular with middle-aged first I've spoken about the activities which are more popular with elderly and teens, and then conversely I've spoken about those that show the opposite trend. Okay, so now when the examiner looks at this, they can see a clear structure. I have spoken about all of the data. I've got an overview. It's easy to follow the points that I'm making. I've done a lot of paraphrasing, and there's some nice language in here. Okay, so just finally then, what parts of this may be standing out to the examiner when they're looking for vocabulary here? We're using structures like a great variation in popularity. I've paraphrased where they said different age groups. I've said different generations. Enjoy greater popularity as a verb phrase with among as a preposition, and that's appeared later on as well. Enjoy their greatest popularity. Conversely as a linker, and also those 2 structures, the former and the latter, they're really useful to avoid repetition, but to be able to say more and add detail when you're describing trends. So in another video, I'll describe more how we can use 3 phrases in IELTS Task 1's any data style question, and they are the former, the latter, and the word respectively. So look out for that. There'll be another video explaining how to use those 3 phrases when you're writing IELTS Task 1's. Have a go yourselves, and don't forget, as usual, if you have any questions, post them in the comments, and subscribe if you find this video useful to see more IELTS uploads.